And this afternoon, we start off from Parliament. The minority there is mounting pressure on President Akufo-Addo's government to cushion Ghanaians in the face of escalating fuel prices. Diesel is selling for more than 23 cedis, while petrol is hovering around 18 Ghana cedis. Speaking to the press, minority spokesperson on energy, John Jinapo, indicated that government has been making supernormal profits from the rising prices of crude on the international market and must use that to cushion Ghanaians.
Fuel that was selling at 6.5 CD per liter has now increased by 300% in less than 1 year. The price of fuel at the pump has increased by more than 300%. Indeed, today, fuel is more costly than even the minimum wage. I've never witnessed that in my life. Today, as we speak, a gallon of diesel sells at about 105 Ghana cedi. This government is making so much money from the Ukraine-Russian war. In the 2022 budget, government projected that it will receive a total amount of about 6 billion for the whole of 2022. That is what was projected in the budget. Today, as we speak, from the PIAC report, in less than 3 months, and I mean just 1 quarter, government has received over 8 billion cedis from our petroleum resources. So in 3 months, government has received more than it projected for the whole year. So government is making supernormal profit. In fact, even the price stabilization and recovery levy, which is supposed to subsidize fuel, government projected that in the first 2 quarters, it will receive 269 million. As we speak, from the Ministry of Finance's own record, government has received about 800 million. And so this notion that government is not making revenue is a fallacy. It's a complete falsehood. Government is making so much money from our petroleum resources. I therefore call on President Akufo-Addo and the outgoing Minister of Finance that they should do something about this price increment. These difficult moments, if it means that government has to use part of our petroleum resources to subsidize fuel, let them do that. Moreover, there's a price stabilization and recovery levy. It is there to subsidize fuel.
Exactly.
It has accumulated a lot of money and they should apply that money. We are saying that the government can apply these supernormal profits to cushion the ordinary consumer. That's what we are saying. And we've demonstrated to you that government is getting more than it required even in the first quarter. We've demonstrated to you that the price stabilization levy, instead of the 260 million, they've gotten about 800 million. We are also adding to the call of President Mahama that the Tema oil refinery, as a matter of urgency, with immediate effect, should process Ghana's domestic crude. That can give us about 45,000 barrels of processed crude every day. That will put a less of a burden on the need for forex. This is not rocket science. This is something we attempted doing by giving Tema Oil Refinery 2 million barrels of oil from the 10 fields under President Mahama. This government took over and sold that barrels of oil. And so something can be done. The president says he's going to look for cheaper oil. From where?
From APAM.
And he did not even give us timelines. These wishful thinkings would not solve the problem. The only thing that will solve it is a practical way, and we have enumerated steps that the president can take in order to address the challenge that we are going through.
Let me bring in now former ranking on the Mines and Energy Committee of Parliament, Adam Mutawakilu, who's joining the conversation this afternoon. Thank you so much, Honorable, for your time. Just before I bring you into the conversation, I want to first of all check out what's the latest in Parliament. Kweku Santi is our parliamentary correspondent. Kweku, I mean, first of all, have we had any response from the majority side? Because we're equally learning that they've prepared a response to the minority.
Indeed, that was the expectation that they were going to respond. It's past 3 p.m. now. They haven't done so yet. Indeed, in confidence, some of the MPs on the majority side who are on the Mines and Energy Committee have been telling me that a number of the issues that John Jinapor raised in his press conference were falsehood, and that government was not just sitting aloof, it was doing what it could to try and cushion Ghanaians. And so we expected that they were coming to put this on record, but as of now, they haven't done so yet. But what they are telling us is that government is taking some steps, just like you heard the John Jinapor say that the president not only failed to give timelines, he also failed to give the sources that they will be getting these cheap petroleum products from. And they want government to give some clear indications about that. And if you come to the House itself, MPs are also worried generally because fuel prices going up is affecting them. Unlike their colleague ministers, they have to buy their own fuel. And the kind of vehicles they use, the kind of gallons that the fuel is consuming. They are very much concerned about this. And they also want government to do something. Just that the majority's concerns and their initial idea that John Jinapor peddles some falsehood has not come yet.
This may not be official, but what are some of the concerns of the majority side of the House?
Indeed, so they are just as they've been laying out, they think that although government have been making some windfall from the, escalating prices on the international market, some of these have already been budgeted for other expenditure, and then government cannot just take that out and say they are going to cushion Ghanaians with that. They are also talking about the deregulated market and saying that although government is a significant player in the market, government just cannot wake up one morning and decide that they are going to set the prices at certain levels. And so the idea about cushioning, the idea about subsidies are something that is just outmoded. But then the presidency, the government itself, be coming out with a comprehensive idea in terms of how they can cushion Ghanaians with this soaring and escalating fuel prices.
A lot has happened in the last hour. At least we are hearing from the regulator, the National Petroleum Authority. There are some reviews going on in terms of the fuel margin. That may not affect consumers, but of course it's got to do with industry as well. How's the minority taking this? Knowing that, for instance, the RSF will be reviewed.
Indeed, only last week, that statement from the NPA came in. I put that question directly to Honorable John Jinapor. He says that will completely not affect the ordinary consumer. There's absolutely nothing that will happen to them at the pumps. They will not go to the pumps, and because of this review of this subsidy, whatever it is, will not affect them in terms of the fuel they get. And they want more Ghanaians to join them in piling up the pressure on government to be able to do something. They say that this fuel prices is crippling, and it's going to cripple businesses. There are a lot of businesses that depend on fuel to be able to do their businesses. And with these amount of prices going up like this, they cannot cope. And so they need the buy-in of all Ghanaians to be able to pile the pressure on government, to turn the heat on President Akufo-Addo and Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta, as well as the Energy Minister Napo, to be able to take some considerable action to be able to bring some relief to the ordinary consumer.
All right, then. I'm grateful for your time. Kwekwa Asante, our parliamentary correspondent there. Let's bring in former ranking on the Mines and Energy Committee, Adam Mutawakilu, who's joining us, former member of parliament for Damongo as well. Thank you, sir, for your time. It's refreshing to hear from you, except that we're in a crisis. That's what the president says. But he says that he's on the lookout for cheaper or a cheaper source of energy, if we could put it that way. Where do you suspect the president may be heading to?
Yeah, thank you very much, and good afternoon to our cherished viewers. The statement from the president is quite vague, and I support the call of the minority. Why is it vague? First, there's no cheap source of supply. You can have a strategic supplier who ensure you reliability of supply, but it can never be cheap. Two, we all know that the petroleum prices is not based on international crude oil prices alone. The taxes, levies, and margins that is imposed by government and the OMCs and BDCs count. And trade, foreign exchange losses, that means the depreciation of the cedi, also count to the petroleum oil prices. So tackling only the supply side is not enough and not adequate. As you can witness, the recent increment in petroleum prices at the pump is not as a result of international oil prices or shortage in supply. It's purely as a result of the continuous depreciation of the cedi, because we buy the petroleum product in dollars, sell it in cedis, and convert it back to dollars to be able to import. And if that is not tackled, it could lead to shortage in supply because the suppliers would not like to lose their investment by charging a price in which the depreciation of the cedi will affect their investment. So reliable, cheap, I have a problem with saying cheap supply. No, you can have a reliable supply. But if the cedi is stabilized, definitely for supply won't have any problem.
But then here we are, and of course, minority believes that one of the ways to deal with it is to go to, for instance, store and start the process of revamping it so we can deal with domestic crude. But will domestic crude suffice? I guess that's the bigger question there.
One of the major things we can do is import substitution. That means producing locally, and that comes to talk. If we produce our own oil, such as crude, and we have a refinery, the best way to do is to revamp it and ensure that it works efficiently. But immediate step is one, to tackle the taxes and tariff levies on our petroleum price delta. I will call for the removal of the special petroleum tax, which has outlived its usefulness, and also the petroleum recovery and stabilization levy must also be used to cushion. Then you look at the upstream. While the downstream, there are increase in prices in the international world market. In terms of exports, we are making windfall. And when we say windfall, this amount that has not been budgeted for. Because if the government budgeted 6.6 billion Ghana is for the whole year, and within the first half of the year, they have made 8.7 billion. That means they've been able to cover whatever has been captured in the budget. And there is an excess of 2.1 billion that has not been budgeted for in the budget. It becomes a windfall.
Yeah, but will that be a prudent use of resources, knowing that government has a tight fiscal space? You agree that we're in a crisis, so government is in search of liquidity.
Government, at the same time, must be aware that the center of the economy is the people. Any government that do not care about the people and talking about the economy and what have you is not making any meaningful decision. The center is the economy, and it has its own economics. Increase in petrol, back in my place, when you go to Damango constituency, most people who used to use motorbike to go to farm are considering other alternatives. And we know time is important in terms of productivity. So if government is only interested in fiscal space and not mind about the people and how petroleum prices go up, don't be surprised by the end of the year or early next year, productivity will decline significantly, which will in turn affect whatever government is doing. So it has a multiplier effect. Petroleum price has a multiplier effect. And therefore, reducing petroleum prices is to stimulate productivity. And productivity will lead to higher GDP and revenue to the country. So they shouldn't look at it as if they are in isolation. They are not in isolation.
And I just want to go back and pick up on the assurances that we're getting from the president that there will be a cheaper source of fuel. Are you ruling out the possibility entirely?
There can be strategic and reliable supply of fuel, not cheaper fuel. I don't know where he's talking about cheaper fuel, because he didn't detail out, and I don't buy to it that there will be cheaper source of fuel. No.
You're not sure we can get that from anywhere at all in the world?
No, I don't think so. What he should be looking at is those factors that are within his control. And that is managing the cedi to ensure that it's stable. If the cedi had been stable, I don't think we'll be experiencing this incremental price. Two, ensuring that some of the taxes in the petroleum price build-up are removed. And thirdly, ensuring that he compensates Ghana with a windfall from the upstream. And then we can make a way. But just say you get a cheap supply of petroleum product, I don't think it is workable.
Honorable, which outlook are you working with now? Because I'm interested in that. A lot of Ghanaians are also interested in knowing what the trends may be in the coming days. Already, transport unions are beginning to ask for a further surge in transport services in terms of the cost. So where are we headed?
First and foremost, I think MPA has lost its mandate by making a statement that OMCs can increase petroleum prices. We are not in total deregulation. What we are in is either what we call partial deregulation or price modulation, which means that MPA is the one responsible to ensure that there is a ceiling within which the OMCs cannot go beyond in terms of price. But if it has thrown its hands in the air and saying that they can increase prices, then it's quite unfortunate they've lost their mandate. And I'll call on the CEO of MPA to sit up and perform its role of price modulation. Going forward, if you look at the trends, the cocoa syndicated loan has come to stabilize the cedi, but it will be here for a while. By 15th November onwards, I won't be surprised the cedi will start serious depreciation again. And once the World Bank, the IMF, the government has no agreement with the IMF, then we should expect petroleum price increment.
And then some Ghanaians are beginning to adjust, of course, trying as much as possible to find alternatives. One of them, and part of the call, has been for organizations to adopt the work from home approach. You've also heard some other policy proposals. What should the average citizen be considering now, in your view?
Yeah, from where we are heading to, there is a constraint on individual budgets. Not only the fuel prices, the economy is just hard, and individually people will start to adjust. In terms of organizations and industries, I think COVID has taught us that not necessarily being physical at a job will always get a job done. Zoom has come to stay. Those days it would have been difficult for somebody to view me in this contributing to national development. But people must adapt and adjust. It is real. Our purchasing power is dropping every day. And our errands should reduce. Even though there are some of them, if you don't physically go, like if you are a farmer and you have to go to the farm to do your work, you cannot stay in the house to do. But as much as possible, people should prioritize their movement and errands in a bid to make some savings, and also adjust to their habits, because most people soon, I can predict next year, food inflation will be above 200. We don't take time. So adjustment now for the future is very critical. And I'll urge Ghanaians to consider that in their plans for the future. But the president must sit up, hold the bull by the horn, and act.
So let's wrap up with the concerns of the transport unions. How do you expect that government should be attempting to deal with this matter? I recall on Sunday on the probe here on the JoyNews channel, the union gave indications that the reason for which the 19% was implemented was because the president had given assurances that fuel prices would not go up once the negotiations were done. However, after the 19% increment, they're having to deal with a further surge in the fuel prices. So they're coming hard, and they will be making that statement once more for transport fares to go up further. How do we find a very soft way out of this? Because mind you, there's the consumer out there, the average citizen out there, and also government is looking at things from a different side.
Yeah, first and foremost, I don't know how the president is telling them that fuel prices will not go up and they just swallow it like that. There have been several statements that have been made by President Nana Akufo-Addo and they never came to fruition. Two, by telling you that fuel prices will not go up, he didn't back it with any practical steps that he would use to make that. But you realize that when you come to the transport industry, it's not only fuel, also cost of repairs, spare parts. Because currently we have serious challenge with the city depreciation that is translating and other activities of government in terms of deficit financing that has translated to high inflation. So cost of spare parts has also gone high, and cost of fuel going up. So their call is in the right direction, looking at the trend that is happening. But as I indicated, the president has the power to take certain decisions to cushion them, and that is what I have outlined. Very, very important.
But they will still make that demand for the increment.
I think that if the president today says that he is removing the special petroleum tax from the price build-up, and as matter of agency, he's taking, let's say, $100 million to cushion petroleum prices for a given period, I don't think they will be talking about increasing prices.
Mm. I take your final words on this whole conversation on fuel prices.
Yeah, I think we are currently on a free fall. The city and the government in action over the period. I expect petroleum prices to still go up, and the president needs to take concrete and steps to ensure that the cushion, even in the US and UK, they are implementing windfall tax on multinationals that are operating, oil companies that are operating, to be able to cushion consumers. US and UK, how much Ghana? We need to take that step first.
I know.
So I want to urge the president to come back and give assurance of how he will cushion Ghanaians in respect to this current trend of fuel increment every day.
And we're grateful for your time here on The Pulse. That's former MP for Damongo and also former ranking on the Mines and Energy Committee of Parliament, Adam Mutawakilu.